Whether you're having a not moving off the couch while you watch the game kind of day, or a no time between conference calls kind of day, it can still be a delicious Dunkin' kind of day. And with Dunkin' now available on DoorDash, it's easier than ever to get your faves brought right to your door. So if you're looking for coffees, donuts, and breakfast sandwiches in the morning, craving some afternoon snack and bacon, or in need of Dunkin' refreshers for a PM pick-me-up, we've got you covered. Order now and get your faves brought to your door through Grubhub, Uber Eats, and DoorDash. Price and participation may vary. Exclusions apply. America runs on Dunkin'.
Hike the trail? Check. Order takeout? Check. Schedule heart checkup? Done. We've all adapted to a new way of living. Keep your healthcare on schedule with Johns Hopkins Medicine, where your health and safety are our highest priorities. We're ready to care for you through virtual and in-person visits across Maryland and the greater Washington region. Your health, our experts, safely caring for you. Schedule your care now. Learn more at hopkinsmedicine.org/safe.
Welcome to the Stephen Shiels Radio Show. Today I'm here with a guest speaker who I've done volunteer work with at the St. Vincent de Paul Society. His name's Patrick. How are ya?
How are you, Stephen? I'm well.
It's good to hear from you. You know, you've travelled the world, and how many countries have you been travelling?
I'm not sure. Somewhere between 60 and 80.
60 and 80 countries. Yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah, quite a few. Some of them not very long.
And was travelling more easier back in the old days than it is now?
Well, a lot easier than it is right now. And I started travelling at a time when, because of Australian politics, and I'm not talking politics, the Australian dollar was stronger.
Yep.
Which meant that it was actually quite cheap to buy overseas money, which meant it was actually quite cheap to travel using the Australian dollar. As the years wore on, it got more and more expensive, and eventually I gave up.
Yeah, I mean, travelling's very, very expensive. I mean, even travelling Australia, I mean, I went to the outback of the Northern Territory, and it's very expensive up there.
Well, the thing is that when you're travelling, what you are often doing as a tourist, and Australia does this quite openly, a lot of other countries do it, is you are supporting the local economy.
Yep.
You are actually helping the local people to live.
Mm-hmm.
So you are supporting the local economy, and some places things are more expensive because of where they are. Now, the Northern Territory is somewhat more expensive because of the sheer distance away from where the things are made. So if you add a couple of thousand kilometres of travelling for a manufacturer over and above the manufacturing costs, all of a sudden it is more expensive.
Well, yeah, when I stayed up, I was in a hostel in Mitchell Street, Darwin, and beer was more expensive up there.
Yep. No, they make it up there, of course, but nevertheless,
yeah,
they drink more of it too.
You know, and yeah, I went up there in the wet season in February, but Coles was pretty much similar to what you'd pay in Sydney and Liquorland.
Yes, in the big cities,
yeah,
they do tend to try to equalise. But other places, I said, when you go around the world, you find incredible ranges in prices. But so you used to once upon a time, and I never actually did it, they used to use a thing called the McDonald's index, which is the price of a hamburger. Even though I'm not a heavy drinker, very often to me the price of a beer was a pretty good indicator of how expensive a place was to live in. You know, and of course, one of the problems when you're travelling and buying things is that sometimes the prices sound shocking. A bottle of beer in Zaire, if I remember correctly, cost me $1 million Zaire.
Wow, what's that Australian?
At that stage, it's about $1.
$1?
Yeah.
Because it's not taxed in...
No, nothing to do with the tax, just to do with the fact that that country had a rather poor government, and the value of the money is just dropping rapidly.
Yeah. I mean, my experience with travelling too, I was in Lynchfield National Park. $10 just for a bottle of water.
Well, that's because you're captive.
Yeah.
A lot of places, you see the same thing if you go to a sporting event.
I know.
A bottle of water inside the gates, half as much as a bottle of water outside the gates.
Yeah, but I think, well, isn't that like a rip-off?
Yes, but it is a rip-off.
Yeah.
But as I said, you're a captive audience.
Yep.
You are there. They are there. You need it. They have it.
Correct.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the cost of travel. But in terms otherwise, the actual physical travelling was probably much of a muchness because I started travelling seriously just after the jumbos came in.
The 747.
The 747 jet came in, and that meant that all of a sudden, a lot of people could fly at a reasonable price. Before that, it was very, very expensive to fly anywhere.
Yeah, I heard. I heard people used to dress up in fancy costumes on the 747.
Yes. I mean, if you were flying first class, you would almost wear your dinner suit.
A tuxedo.
It was. But so at that stage, travelling became quite a bit easier in terms of getting to places. And then the way I actually did travel, I always travelled in an organised way. So apart from about 6 months bumming around Europe, the rest of my travelling was kind of with organised groups. And that meant that, and of course 6 weeks bumming around New Zealand, that doesn't count. That was a long time ago. And what it meant was that a lot of the worrying about what we were going to do next, where I was going to spend the night and things, was gone, and I was actually just kind of sit back and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, like a tour you went on.
Yeah, kind of like tours.
You know, I went on. I've been on a Kentucky tour on Top Deck, but I find they're very full on, and you don't sleep properly because you got to get up at 8 o'clock in the morning, hungover. You know.
Well, that's because you're on a Kentucky or a Top Deck. Young people tours where they have lots of beer. I've travelled with the grown-up groups.
No, but that's
no, not quite. But we were very rarely hungover because we knew. I mean, if you were facing as I was, the better part of 20 weeks. Travelling like that on something that made a Top Deck look comfortable, this on the back of a truck. You knew you were going to get up next morning, so you did behave yourself more.
Yeah, look, I mean, each to their own. I mean, that's just what I've found. I mean, I did a Top Deck in New Zealand, Top Deck to Northern Territory, Kentucky to America, but you're always on the go, and you just I find you just get so tired. And you're just exhausted.
There's certainly a fairly constant forward movement involved. Yes, you can get tired. And I did a couple of times, but I suppose I kind of just learned to relax into it. Because I tend to do ones that were long. Like
30-day trips?
Oh, no, like measured in weeks.
Weeks?
Started with my first big one was Kathmandu to London.
Shit, that's a long way.
Weeks. That was 3 months.
Yeah.
Then 9 weeks in Africa, and then about 20 weeks in Africa.
Yeah.
I did a few other shorter ones as well, and actually I prefer the longer ones.
Yeah, I mean, look, travelling, I think, Patrick's a personal thing. I found I like going on cruises more. I cruise. Yeah. You know, the boat, you've got everything. You got your own room, you got the nightclub, you know, casino, if you're a gambler.
I've never actually tried serious cruising, but I can understand the attraction.
Each to their own. I mean, I like the, privacy of my own room.
Yeah. Because I thought I had the privacy of my own tent.
That's pretty good.
I had to put up, of course.
At least you got a washing machine on the boat that you can wash your clothes all the time. You know.
We had blocks to beat our clothes against.
Yeah, I mean, but see, the problem with Europe, there are some hotels that don't even have washing machines.
Oh, well, in Europe,
Yeah.
most of the hotels, if you look, had clotheslines in the bathroom.
You serious?
Yeah. And you'd hop in the shower and you'd walk on your clothes.
You just put soap on it.
Trust me.
Yeah.
And that's I particularly remember doing that in Cairo.
Were your clothes clean?
I'm spending 3 weeks in what was actually the desert.
Yeah.
And my clothes were all bright red.
Mm.
They started off nice normal colours. They all ended up the same colour of red. And you just got into the hotel and got on the floor and had a shower, and at the same time squish, 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 and
yeah.
They came out. They washed perfectly.
Or you just put soap on the clothes or washing detergent?
Yes. I actually, again, being an organised kind of person, I actually had little tubes of washing detergent.
Yeah.
And everything came out clean.
Yeah, but it comes out clean. I tried this in Las Vegas in a hotel. I washed my clothes in the bathroom, but they just weren't dry properly. Need the sun.
You obviously have trouble drying them, yes.
I tried to get the hairdryer, Patrick, and that didn't do it.
I mean, you do have to be aware that that's part of the trick is to make sure you have the kind of clothes that can dry.
Yeah, and packing according to the conditions as well.
Yeah.
You know. No, but 60 countries is a lot to have on your passport in that time. I mean, you've even been to Russia.
Well, it was the Soviet Union.
Yeah, and that's a hard country to get in because of the whole visa process.
Well, at that stage, what happened was I arrived in London after having driven over from Kathmandu, the big long overland trek that used to be the kind of thing that was done. And I arrived in a hostel in London. I was staying in a hostel in London, and there was this advertisement for a trip to the Soviet Union and Finland and places. And I said, that looks fun. So I paid up the money, and because it was an organised trip, they organised the visas. Because it's an organised trip, the visas went crunk.
Wow.
Of course, equally, because of an organised trip, once we crossed into those eastern countries, actually West Berlin was all right. Yeah, we'll have to wander around East Berlin, but we tended to have a travelling local tour guide with us to keep an eye on us to make sure we only went to the right places. So they did kind of keep an eye on us. Not a heavy eye. I mean, in Moscow we were fairly free to wander around. Yep. Fairly free. But generally, and I think that I wandered around Prague. But there was a tendency, that because if you're wandering around, you can't go very far anyway. But we were under pretty kind of clear instructions about, don't go into those kind of places and don't photograph military installations and things if you want to leave the country. Yeah, the problem is, I've heard Russia. Do they have police? They're very strict, and they'll deport you straight away. That had been known to happen to people, yes. They're the type of authorities, tourists. Yeah, literally, I talked 40 years ago now, so it was slightly different. In fact, nearly 50 years ago now, 45 years ago, so it was slightly different, but similar idea, very authoritarian. And there were people who were refused entry at the border. None of my group, but people. There was, in fact, apparently one bus that was simply towed to the border and pushed over because it had broken down in Russia. They said your visa is expired, so they just pushed the bus over the border. You're kidding? They did that? Yeah. That's pretty scary. Yes, that's one of the reasons why I kind of, again, made sure that when I was travelling, I was going with the slightly classier, the slightly more expensive companies, the companies that looked like they really knew what they were doing. Yeah, I mean, look, I feel the problem with Russia is they're very, very strict. They can deny you a visa even if you don't have a criminal record. Oh, any country can do that. Are you serious? Oh, yes. It's harder. Up until about, good heavens, mid-70s, I can't remember the exact date, there was an Australian law that said that to get into Australia, at the border, they can give you a dictation test. They can ask you to write down any European language. Quite seriously. And there are a couple of cases where there were people they didn't want lent in. Then one chapter they said, okay, we'll give you the test, and what we'll do is we'll give it to you in Irish. Irish Gaelic, that is. And this fellow who was a Finn was expected to get into Australia, had to be able to transcribe accurately Irish Gaelic, language he'd never heard before in his life. So certainly they could keep you out for any reason they wanted to. If they wanted to keep you out, they could. Every country in the world's like that. You'd try getting an American visa.
Yeah. I mean, I've had it. I had an American visa. I got an ESTA visa.
Yep.
But I found, the TSA, they're just arseholes, mate.
Well, some are, yeah, but anyway.
And I went through customs, and he was like, "Oh, I don't think you've got enough money to stay." I said, "Look, I'm on a Kentucky tour." It's just a rude, arrogant prick, mate.
Yeah, well, the people on the borders can be a little bit. Some can be very good, some can be absolute pains in the needle. That makes it very hard to sit down.
Why is that? Why can they get away with that? That's not right.
It's power. They have the authority.
Yeah.
And most countries in the world are rather precious about their borders. And, again, I'm going to slightly touch on politics. Don't forget we had one of our prime ministers saying, we will decide who we will let into Australia and under what circumstances.
True.
So letting people into the country is always something that is special because people regard themselves as being special.
Well, that's it. I mean, the problem with the Yanks or the Americans is they're quite paranoid with who they let in. I mean...
Well, again, as I said, I'm not going to... This is getting close to politics, we weren't going to talk, but yes, certainly...
Yeah.
It is a country that has always regarded itself as being special. Extra special. And one of the legitimate concerns, and the one about the money is a legitimate concern, is that if you don't have enough money to live on when you're in the country, then who's going to feed you? And civilised countries, and America is basically civilised, would find themselves feeding you.
Because I wanted to ask this question to an experienced traveller. If you went travelling to overseas and you had no money or no place to stay, what would happen to you? Will they let you in or turn you back?
When you arrive at the border...
Yeah.
If you arrive at the border, there's every chance that they would refuse entry. If you had no money, they would refuse entry. And you then end up on the plane, the next plane home.
Who would have to pay for the airfare getting you back home?
You would eventually.
Oh, okay. Yep.
They'll eventually bill you.
Yep.
One way or another.
Because that...
Although what would happen was...
Yeah.
If you don't try to go back into that same country, they'll never catch up with you.
Yeah. Because you see a few cases on border security where people have met an online partner and they only come in with $8 in their pocket.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking of also, those same shows. You find that they ended up as being sent back home, essentially.
Because when I went to America, I was on a very, very tight budget. For 2 weeks, I had $800.
Yeah.
And I was on a Kentucky tour, and look, I spent it wisely. I was stingy, actually, but I kind of thought, should I take more money, or what is your advice with budgeting for traveling?
Be stingy, yeah.
Yep.
Make sure, however, you've got some access to extra funds.
Yep.
One way or another. See, nowadays it's quite easy. you can carry your ordinary plastic.
Mm.
I used my Visa card, my MasterCard, in the middle of the African jungle.
Mm-hmm.
Literally.
Wow.
I was actually able to book a balloon trip in a camping ground in the Serengeti National Park.
Wow.
Using my Visa card, my MasterCard.
Was that credit card or a debit card?
A credit card.
Yep. Because I wanted to ask...
You would need... But there are all sorts of possibilities.
Yep.
That you can now buy what are effectively debit cards.
Yeah.
Although they work as credit cards.
Mm.
The point is, you use even a debit card. Most debit cards are now credit cards in disguise.
Yeah, except...
in the sense that it is a Visa card that operates through the Visa system,
but
directly debits your account, and that's tricky.
Well, one is you're using your own money, the other one's
your own money, then, yes.
Spending the bank's. Now, I wanted to touch on this, because there's some young Australians out there that travel with a credit card, but when they come back, they get a massive bill to pay.
Well, that's... Again, you have to be aware of what you're spending.
Yeah, and the fees involved as well.
Oh, yes, and there are some fees, although they're not necessarily huge. You can get caught with exchange rates.
Yeah.
Because they tend to use the exchange rate that works best for them, which is not surprising. And some of them, depending on where they're issued from, actually run them through two currencies.
Yep. And
that really that hits you hard.
It does.
There are some tricks with using a credit card. I mean, the one I used had no problems at all. I knew how much I was going to spend. I knew I had the money available. I knew I had the money back in the bank to cover it anyway. I knew it back home in time to pay it off. So there were no problems with that.
Well, that's it. I mean, and what would have you heard of stories where Australians have been mugged overseas?
Not directly. I don't know of anybody who's actually been mugged.
And what do you do if you've broken the law overseas or you've been mugged?
If you were mugged overseas,
yep.
Depending on who you are, well, the first thing you do is you do what you do anywhere else in the world is you contact the local constabulary and things like that.
Yep.
You report it. But equally, most countries of the world, there is the Australian consulates or somebody acting as Australian consul. And that's exactly what the Australian consulate's job is. The consuls around the world, one of their major jobs is assisting Australian citizens around the world.
Yep.
If you end up in court, what they will do is they will ensure that you get a lawyer and things like that. They won't necessarily pay for it. They might actually pay for it and give you a loan to pay for it.
Yep.
But they'll ensure that all the laws of that country, not Australian law, are followed. And bearing in mind that the laws of that country might be quite different to Australian laws. So what you might think is unreasonable there might in fact be totally reasonable according to the laws of the country you're in.
Yeah.
So the trick is, when you are travelling, you do need to be aware of the local variations, local things. I mean, for instance, when I hit Kenya, I was with another fellow. We both just arrived and we were wandering around and we saw this magnificent building, huge, not big, huge, but a big, maybe about 8 to 10 story building that had a flag covering almost the entire face of the building, this Kenyan flag. It was a magnificent sight. So we took a photo.
Oh dear.
We spent, and a couple of local constabularies did grab us and hauled us in. And they let us go after about 3/4 of an hour because they realised that they weren't able to get any money from us. It was a shakedown.
What, from the police?
The police were actually shaking us down. They were actually trying to get us to pay money to go and get away.
Are you serious? The police did this to you?
Yeah.
How'd they get away with that? Because I thought...
Because we were technically in the wrong.
Yeah.
they could quite legitimately have actually locked us up properly.
Yep.
But instead, they talked to us, and eventually we just kind of kept on looking dumb.
Yep.
Which does help. And we're able to get away.
Well,
it was rather interesting at the time.
They let you go?
Yeah. No, I'm still locked up. Yes, they let us go. They eventually decided, as I said, I think they eventually worked out that we were not. See, one of the troubles is that because we are travelling in countries that are relatively impoverished, there is a belief that we are ourselves wealthy.
Yeah.
And compared to them, we are.
Yeah, true.
So there is an expectation that we have loose cash that we can just immediately dispose of with us. The trouble is, both of us just arrived in Kenya and we had no loose cash. It was all kind of tied up in either travellers' checks or actually on the cards that we were carrying, but not much in the way of Kenyan currency.
Sounded like they wanted to bribe you.
Want us to bribe them, yeah. They wanted to shake it. It was a shakedown, yeah.
Or scare you. Yeah, I've heard Russia.
I don't know about Russia. As I said, my experience was 45 years ago, but in most places where there are very weak economies, there is a tendency for some of the people who enforce that authority to try to use it to their advantage. And it happens because, the system is weak.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, I've been in the third world country, Port Vila, Vanuatu, Noumea, and I saw things were more loose, like people stand on the back of an SUV while driving.
Well, I mean, things like that, it's just general behaviour. They do things there that we used to do in Australia 30 years ago.
Yeah, and I was like, what the hell? We can't do this back home.
We used to.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Come on.
I mean. But, yeah, no, I wanted to point about Russia because I've heard of people actually paying the border security to get through the border quicker. Money.
Yes. That happened to me on the Indian-Pakistani border.
Mm-hmm.
I was with the group, and I was actually carrying some of the group papers because the bloke who was responsible wasn't allowed into Pakistan because he's Belgian. That was a funny story too.
Are you serious?
And yeah.
Oh God.
I know there are also in this world of ours, there's some very strange things happen. But anyway, the bloke on the border kept on asking, give me a biro. Because he had no biros. Kid you not. And the problem was that I actually had no biros with me. I had a biro, but the only biro I had was a good one that I couldn't give away. Didn't want to give away.
Yeah.
Fortunately, there was another biro turned up, so I think it worked all right.
Yeah.
The thing was solved, but nevertheless, it was not as. It was again interesting.
Well, I suppose those are the awkward situations you come across when you're travelling and crossing borders. It's quite scary when you're doing it for the first time in your life, Yeah. I mean, I wanted to say about, visa, and you mentioned, like, they can turn people back if they don't want. Can they actually refuse entry even if you have a visa?
Oh, yes.
God.
Any country can turn you back at the border, yes.
Why is that? Like, you got to...
because the visa simply says you have passed the first test.
Yep.
That's all. The visa is simply a first test passed.
Yep.
Then you have to pass the second test.
Yep.
And then, when you've done that, because the thing is, as I said much earlier, borders are taken very seriously.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
very, very seriously indeed.
But I wanted to say, I went to New Zealand, I went up to Auckland, but they were very easygoing there for an Australian.
Well, we are near neighbours, we speak the same language, we're culturally similar. Now, this is all important. And secondly, even then, we are taking money into the country. So they're quite happy to take Australians, and they begin to accept us again in the next couple of weeks. So I think it'll be all right again, sooner or later.
Yeah, well, I wanted to speak about COVID-19 and, Africa, has Ebola over there.
Yeah, well, Ebola is hanging around and will hang around for as long as Ebola hangs around.
Now, when you went to Africa, did you come across Ebola-infected areas?
No, because I was before Ebola.
Ah, because Ebola goes back to the 70s.
No, this was actually maybe a bit later. Ebola was not a real concern.
Yep.
The biggest concern in Africa was and still is AIDS.
HIV, yeah.
HIV/AIDS.
Hike the trail? Check. Order takeout? Check. Schedule heart checkup? Done. We've all adapted to a new way of living. Keep your healthcare on schedule with Johns Hopkins Medicine, where your health and safety are our highest priorities. We're ready to care for you through virtual and in-person visits across Maryland and the greater Washington region. Your health, our experts, safely caring for you. Schedule your care now. Learn more at hopkinsmedicine.org/safe.
The sweet aromas of the apple fritter, cinnamon roll, and blueberry muffin are hard to resist. So making it the rest of the way home without reaching in your McDonald's bag is no easy task. But nothing worth doing is easy.
Wake up and pair any one of these sweet, fluffy, frittery bakery treats with a McCafe iced coffee. Get any size and any flavor for just 99 cents until 11 a.m. Price and participation may vary.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Yes.
Yep.
That was and still is the biggest concern.
Freddie Mercury died of that.
Yeah, well, lots of people. I mean,
The singer.
In Africa in particular,
Oh, yeah.
because of various factors, it really was a serious issue.
Because I wasn't born when HIV came out. Was that a pandemic?
Grief, that's an interesting question.
Or not?
It was never declared a pandemic because of the way it was transmitted.
Yep.
See, HIV/AIDS is serum transmitted.
Yep.
In other words, it takes close, intimate contact or transmission of blood.
Yes.
Or something like this.
Yep.
So it's what's called serum transmitted.
Yep.
This means that it gets into populations and it transmits through populations through things like sexual promiscuity and or needle usage promiscuity.
Yep. Yep.
They are the two major transmitters of it. There were a couple of horrendously sad cases of transmission through things like blood transfusions. But generally, this is how it happens. Say in places like Africa.
Yep.
Because it got widely into the community before there's no general awareness of it, it was in the whole population, male and female.
Yeah.
So something that was very strong advice to anybody was you didn't go anywhere near, and I'm going to get rough language here, don't go anywhere near, for instance, near a prostitute in most African countries, for instance.
Yep.
Because there's a very real possibility that she'll have been infected.
Yep.
Because it is, that was a major. So, see, in other parts of the world, because it started, it's kind of, because it got, for instance, into the homosexual population for various factors. There was less transmission through to the general population, but there was still quite serious transmission. So it was a serious issue.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was genuinely scary.
It is scary.
In Australia, and again, in Australia,
yeah,
just as we had with COVID, we had an extremely strong, very powerful, and very active reaction to it. The television advertising, and if you ever want to see some scary television ads, look up the HIV/AIDS television ads from Australia. They're called the Grim Reaper ads.
Oh yeah.
Where basically they'd have a group of people, and it's men, women, and children, like 10-pin bowling pins, and they were being bowled down by the virus. And people were. It really was an all-out. This is a very scary disease. Fortunately, we know the main ways you can catch it. If you avoid the behaviours that will get you catch the disease, you'll be safe. If you catch the disease, however, and at this time, you will probably die.
That is true, but
nowadays they have very good treatments.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that.
No vaccination, but very good treatments. So it's now possible for people with HIV/AIDS to live relatively normal lives.
There's people out there that live with it and just look healthy.
Yes. Yes. I know several people who have. I know at least one who is moderately quite healthy. He's had other conditions, but I know several people who have HIV/AIDS. Yes.
But is it true that should avoid alcohol and smoking?
Well, they're the kind of because they're immunocompromised.
Yeah.
They have to live a similar lifestyle to somebody, for instance, who's receiving treatment for cancer.
Yep.
They have to look after themselves in that same kind of way as somebody receiving some of these other immunosuppressing, immune response suppressing conditions. So it is actually a scary condition, but it is now treatable.
Yep. So
you can live a relatively normal life, but bearing in mind that you are taking a load of medications. If you're taking a load of medications, then you want to give them the best chance to work. So you stay off things that are likely to make them not work.
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, Magic Johns, the NBA basketball player, has HIV, and he apparently just lives normal.
Well, as I said, he lives as normally as can be. Yeah.
But there's still no vaccine for HIV.
That's correct.
How come? Do you think we'll get a vaccine one day?
A lot of work is going on with it, about it. But at the same time, nobody really knows. I mean, it's like everything, because it is, unlike the coronaviruses, it's a very strange little virus. And what particularly makes it very, very nasty in terms of vaccination is it constantly reinvents itself.
Yes.
It's one of these viruses that constantly reinvents itself. And by doing that, it makes life very hard for other people.
Yeah, the problem with HIV is if the mother has it, it passes on to the child, and the child's got it for the rest of his or her life.
Yep.
That's quite bad, because there's no cure for it.
There's no cure, but there's very good treatments.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, talk about the Ebola virus. Now, that's a very bad virus. Any young person can pick it up. Anyone can get it.
Yeah, but unlikely.
Yep.
Because it is being controlled in many ways. The same way as the COVID is being controlled. People are just very aware of it where it is.
Yeah.
There's a high awareness of it. And by being aware of it, you can actually keep track of it.
Well, COVID's an interesting virus, because I've heard of cases where children can have COVID-19 and just have a mild a runny nose and a sore throat, and then they've given it to the parents and the elderly, and the kids don't.
Oh yes, I mean
that's
all
weird.
Of these viruses, there are all sorts of challenges.
Yeah.
And all sorts of way it affects you. So I wouldn't want again. It needs to be taken seriously.
I mean, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, he picked it up from his two little children.
Yep.
And he had, I think he just had mild symptoms of just a slight sore throat.
He could easily, yep.
Now, but see, in the pandemic, I think the World Health Organization was advising elderly not to visit the grandchildren, especially the kids.
Yeah, that is still applying, yes.
That's quite, it's sad, because...
It's sad, but it is.
Mm.
That's one of the things we're doing is what is, rather than what we would like.
You know, and at your age, you know, the older you get, apparently COVID-19 can affect you more than when you're younger.
Again, that's probably true.
Yeah.
I mean, I am, being officially old as I am.
Yep.
I'm kind of sitting in that band of... It's interesting, I saw a couple of weeks ago, I saw the British list.
Mm.
And being over 70, I'm in the fourth group of people who would be vaccinated in Britain.
Yep.
They start with the very old, then they go to medical professionals, then they go to the older. People who are immune compromised, people who are going to be sick, and I was about the fourth group. But nevertheless, at the moment, there's no problems with me.
That's good.
And if there are no problems, there are no problems.
Well, that's it. I mean, there was a woman who was 103 years old. She tested positive to COVID-19, and she lived through the Spanish flu, and apparently she survived, and she's fine.
That wouldn't surprise me, yeah.
And that's strange, and there was a young man who was fit and healthy, and he died of COVID-19.
Yeah, well, again, diseases and how diseases work...
Yeah.
And how they affect individual people is one of these unknown things.
Oh, yeah.
But, so you have something like COVID-19, which is a disease that is just on a year old.
Yeah, it's fairly new.
Fairly new. It is less than a year since the first case was reported in a human being. It's amazing that so much is known about it at all.
I know.
How it's going to affect individual people, we don't know.
Let's see, when it first came out, the symptoms were so similar to a normal flu.
Well, yeah, normal flu, normal cold, yes. I mean, they still are.
You know, I've been tested for COVID-19 twice.
That is unless you get very sick.
Yeah.
In which case the symptoms are of a major pneumonia, and you're dying.
Yeah, and that's what I found out. Because when I first heard about it, I thought it was just a little virus, but you know, the symptoms is just weird because they don't show up straight away, like SARS or MERS or the flu did.
Yeah.
You know, and then the whole isolation as well.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, it's been, you know, I don't know. Do you think COVID-19 will still be around even when we've got a vaccine?
COVID-19 will be around for at least 20 years.
Wow.
What will happen is if you want to travel around the world, just as nowadays, if you want to go to South America, you've got to get your yellow fever vaccination.
Mm-hmm.
When I started travelling, if you wanted to go anywhere in the world, you had to have your yellow card.
Yep.
And this card had your vaccination for smallpox, cholera, typhoid.
Yep.
And basically, most countries in the world wouldn't let you cross the border if you didn't have proof of those vaccinations.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, most countries in the world, until they eliminate it, would not let you in, particularly the smallpox.
Yeah.
If you didn't have the smallpox vaccination, sorry, mate, you go home.
Yeah.
Yep.
But see, you got these vaccinators out there that thinking vaccines cause autism. You lived in a time where it was a doctor. I don't know his name. He wrote an article.
I know of the story. Yes, I mean it's one of these somewhat scandalous events of modern medicine. Yes.
Yeah. Apparently, because I've spoken to a few people and I heard, well, they didn't, the vaccine wasn't in the right temperature in the fridge and it might have caused some problems in the body.
Yep.
But there's no medical evidence to say that vaccines cause autism, because if you're a doctor or a nurse, well, you have to have a vaccine, of course.
Yep. Well, this is it. I mean, the vaccines causing autism was... I mean, I actually had a colleague whose son developed autism.
Yep.
And he was convinced it was the vaccine.
Yep.
Because the problem is that autism presents
and
it starts being visible at the same time as you're getting the vaccine.
Yep.
Unfortunately, that just happens. That's happened. And so what happens is that you have a vaccine shot and you might get a bit crook as a result, but quite a few kids did. And then you develop autism.
Yeah.
It's a fairly natural belief that there's a cause and effect. Because you see the one personal case. What you don't see is the 100 kids who were vaccinated didn't get any kind of side effects. And didn't develop autism. And what you don't see is the unvaccinated kids who therefore didn't have any side effects who also developed autism. And they did the arithmetic.
Yep.
The arithmetic wasn't very hard with large numbers of people and worked out that no.
Whether you're having a not moving off the couch while you watch the game kind of day, or a no time between conference calls kind of day, it can still be a delicious Dunkin' kind of day. And with Dunkin' now available on DoorDash, it's easier than ever to get your faves brought right to your door. So if you're looking for coffees, donuts, and breakfast sandwiches in the morning, craving some afternoon snack and bacon, or in need of Dunkin' refreshers for a PM pick-me-up, we've got you covered. Order now and get your faves brought to your door through Grubhub, Uber Eats, and DoorDash. Price and participation may vary. Exclusions apply. America runs on Dunkin'.
The sweet aromas of the apple fritter, cinnamon roll, and blueberry muffin are hard to resist. So making it the rest of the way home without reaching in your McDonald's bag is no easy task. But nothing worth doing is easy.
Wake up and pair any one of these sweet, fluffy, frittery bakery treats with a McCafe iced coffee. Get any size and any flavor for just 99 cents until 11 a.m. Price and participation may vary.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
It does not cause. There's no connection.
Well, there's none. I mean, I know people in the military, when they go overseas, have to have vaccines. Soldiers do.
Oh, well, I mean, there are lots of vaccines. I mean, I've had rabies vaccine. I've had yellow fever vaccine. I've actually had cholera.
Yeah.
Even as late as the early 90s.
You had cholera disease or the cholera vaccine?
Cholera vaccination.
Yeah.
That was necessary for some countries still. Yellow fever was still necessary for some countries. I mean, if they could develop a vaccine for malaria, I would definitely have it before I travelled anywhere.
Yeah, I wanted to speak about malaria because that spread from a mosquito bite.
Well, that's one of the ways, yeah.
Now, it's advised if you do travel to a malaria-infected country, you take malaria tablets.
Yep.
But I've heard there's side effects to them.
Well, there are about 10 different types of malaria tablets.
Yep.
So some have side effects, some don't.
Yep.
Some turn you yellow, historically. A bit of a standard joke, that.
Oh, yeah. No, it's Because in the Northern Territory, we have what's called Ross River fever.
Yeah, and that's a similar one. And the other thing is you make sure you have some kind of anti-malaria, some kind of malarial protection, some kind of mosquito protection.
Yeah, because when I went, I just put mosquito repellent.
Oh yeah, that mosquito repellent is a pretty good way to start.
But then you think, like, the Aboriginals who are living out in the land, they don't seem to get, like, Ross River fever.
Possibly they're adapted to it.
Yeah.
Possibly they get it and you don't hear about it. That does happen.
Because Ross River fever, I'm told, you can be sick up to 6 months and your body just has to get rid of it on its own.
And that's you see. I mean, if you're living in that area,
yeah,
it's quite possible that you might get a very low dose, a low intensity dose as a young person, and live through it, and build up your antibodies.
Well, that's true. I mean, there's tribes in the Amazon jungle that have an immunity to malaria.
There are actually quite a few, a lot of the black African races.
Yeah.
Carry what's called sickle cell anemia. And along the southern Mediterranean, there's something called Tassili. I think it's that. And what happens is this is a genetic condition that, while it's nasty, restricts your life. And if you have only one gene for it, you are far from being a healthy person. But this same condition sets up your blood in such a way that it kills the malaria parasite.
Yep.
So you've got this trade-off. So I think something like sickle cell anemia is a particularly common one, but there's a I can't remember why I got the name wrong. It's that actually will having it in your genes will restrict the capacity for malaria to kill you. Not the best way to do it, but it works.
Well, there was talks about some malaria drugs to treat COVID-19 as well. I think it was doxycycline.
The hydroxychloroquine, yes, which
is it doxychloroquine?
Which never worked.
Yeah. But no, that was some talks. But that's media. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know. Yeah. Don't listen to the media. Listen to the health experts.
Yeah.
But see, there's been where I think Australia's looking at the AstraZeneca vaccine, and that someone had an allergic reaction to the stage. I think it was stage 2 trial of it.
Yeah. Again, there have been all sorts of interesting things have happened.
Now, Britain's got their own one. I think every country's going to develop their own brand of this vaccine.
Actually, Britain is using the Pfizer one, which is French-German.
Yeah.
Which is quite surprising.
But what's the difference? Is there a difference in vaccine? Because
yes. There are all sorts of ways you can make them. See, basically vaccines work by persuading the body to recognise that you've got this disease floating around, that this is nasty. And I don't want, the body just says, hey, this is nasty, I don't like it.
Gets rid of it.
Out.
Yeah.
And so there are a couple of different flavours of vaccines. They're technically quite different. The best way to put it, one works using something like the direct virus or something, what's called an attenuated version of the virus itself. And what they do is they get something that's like the virus, only a lot weaker, and they inject that into you, or something like the outer shell of the virus. And the body says, oh, this is something that feels wrong, I'm going to get rid of it.
Yep.
And other ones actually work at the genetic level, and they're much more complex.
Yep. I mean, to me, Patrick, I see it. If it's saving your life, then it doesn't matter what brand. If it's AstraZeneca.
No, it's not the brand. The fact is, they work differently. And have different availability. I mean, the AstraZeneca, if it works, which is one of the British ones, will have a great advantage of being very cheap, and because of nature being able to be carried around in ordinary fridges, whereas the Pfizer one has to be kept hard frozen, 70 degrees below.
Yep.
Which is very cold indeed.
It gets to the question, well, do you take it straight away, or do you wait until they fix the fix or improve it?
You
know.
How long is a piece of string?
Yeah, I mean, I get the flu shot every year. I've found since getting it, I haven't caught the flu, maybe just a mild cold, but when I never used to have it, I'd get the flu. Is it true that the pharmaceutical company's always improving the flu shot?
Well, the thing about the flu is not that they're improving it. The flu is also another one of these family of viruses.
Yeah.
And there's no single flu genome.
Yeah.
And there are at least 8 different families of flu germs. You've got the H5N3 and things like that they talk about.
Yep.
And what happens is that they're families, but every year the flu mutates, it changes itself slightly.
Mm-hmm.
And by changing itself slightly, it means the previous flu shot ain't going to work. And so that's the issue. The previous flu shot won't necessarily work. So each year they have to create a new flu vaccine to match this year's flu.
Yeah, it is quite true that you say that, because I get told from my GP that, it's going to be a bad flu season this year.
Well, they can tell that, yes, because many of the flu, they know what the symptoms are going to be.
Yeah.
And they can have a pretty good guess as to what the flu this year is going to be like. Because they know the flavours, as I said, the flavour of the flu for this year might be one of the stronger versions, or it might be simply flu. And some flus, as I said, it's got the flavour.
Yep.
And each year the flu changes itself ever so slightly. And sometimes they say, "Oi, I'm going to get you," and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, it's an interesting, the flu. And I wanted to speak about COVID-19 and the weather. We didn't hear much about COVID-19 up in the outback of the Northern Territory or Perth. Does this virus like a certain temperature?
Because it needs people to spread it.
So it spreads with people. Yep, gotcha.
Yeah. If you think about it, I mean, these viruses are spread by people.
That's it. Look, I've even picked up the flu in the middle of summer from the air conditioning.
Yep.
But I mentioned the outback because the Northern Territory is very hot in the dry season. Yep. Does this virus have a temperature that it likes most? Because it seemed the cold weather. This
is something that their first reaction was probably the warmer weather would be less. It would be less comfortable in the warmer weather.
Yeah.
Most of these viruses prefer the colder weather.
Yep.
But again, this one's not necessarily playing by the rules.
Yeah, because it spread quite quick in Singapore, and Singapore's quite muggy. America too in the summer when it was 40 degrees. Because
so as I said, this flu, this little beastie, is very much playing by his own rules. He says, I'm coronavirus. I'm going to get you the way I want to.
That's it. You know, it was a weird virus. It came from Wuhan, China.
Well, probably, yes.
Now, do you think this was a man-made virus or spread from bats, from a sea market or a fish market in Wuhan?
No, I don't in any way go for the theory about that it was necessarily that was man-made.
Yeah, because there are conspiracy theories out there.
There are all sorts of wonderful theories, most of which don't make much sense when you look at them.
You know, I hear a conspiracy theory of American soldiers decided to let the virus out into the public of Wuhan.
Yeah, definitely.
You know.
Definitely. I mean, one of the issues is that to be a military virus,
yep,
it'd be useless. You don't create a military virus unless you have an antidote for it.
Well, that's it. Because
How simple is that?
I know.
That's as easy as that. I mean, you don't kill your own population out of the possibility, on the off chance you might hurt somebody else.
Yeah. Well, that's it. It's common sense. I mean, I hear conspiracy theories of World War III is going to be fought with a virus.
Well, now.
Do you think there will be?
That's another. How World War III is going to be fought, heaven knows. And thank God, it's not likely to happen. But there are several possibilities.
If you play Call of Duty Black Ops and they got all the modern technology of World War III, that's a possibility. But you know.
No. The thing is, something like World War III, and the big daddy, of course, World War III are the nukes.
Yeah.
And I'm of a generation when World War III was going to be fought by nuclear weapons.
Yeah, doesn't nuclear weapons go back all the way to the Cold War?
They go back to pre-Cold War.
And World War II.
The first and only use of nuclear weapons was World War II.
Yeah, in Hiroshima.
The Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs.
Yeah.
Now, when you think about it, after World War II, they then developed bigger, badder, and nastier nukes.
Yeah.
I mean, the bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki were fission bombs. They were pretty good. As bombs go, they were quite nasty. However, since then, they've developed the H-bomb.
Yeah.
The fission bomb, the fusion bomb, and it was so much more bang for the buck.
Yeah, that was bad stuff. I mean, the atom...
It is bad stuff, and again, I'm of the generation, where there was quite serious possibilities of the world.
Whether you're having a not moving off the couch while you watch the game kind of day, or a no time between conference calls kind of day, it can still be a delicious Dunkin' kind of day. And with Dunkin' now available on DoorDash, it's easier than ever to get your faves brought right to your door. So if you're looking for coffees, donuts, and breakfast sandwiches in the morning, craving some afternoon snack and bacon, or in need of Dunkin' refreshers for a PM pick-me-up, we've got you covered. Order now and get your faves brought to your door through Grubhub, Uber Eats, and DoorDash. Price and participation may vary. Exclusions apply. America runs on Dunkin'.
Hike the trail? Check. Order takeout? Check. Schedule heart checkup? Done. We've all adapted to a new way of living. Keep your healthcare on schedule with Johns Hopkins Medicine, where your health and safety are our highest priorities. We're ready to care for you through virtual and in-person visits across Maryland and the greater Washington region. Your health, our experts, safely caring for you. Schedule your care now. Learn more at hopkinsmedicine.org/safe.
The world disappearing overnight.
I mean, the atom bomb was tested in Maryland, Australia. I think that's in Western... Is that Western Australia?
Central Australia, South Australia.
Now, the Aborigines weren't told about it, and they ended up...
Oh, lots of people weren't told about it.
But see, in the history books, no one talks about the atom bomb in Australia. And there's uranium in I think, in some parts of the Northern Territory.
Oh, the fact that Australia mines uranium is well known.
Yeah.
The mining of uranium in Australia is pretty common stuff.
You see, the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, they've done a lot of dirty stuff.
Yeah, however, what was happening in Australia has nothing to do with America.
Yeah.
That was all Great Britain.
Oh yeah, I think it was the British did. Yeah, they did come to Australia.
That was all Great Britain. I mean, the Australian involvement in any nuclear developments was entirely Great Britain.
Did Australia get involved with the CIA?
Oh, they won't admit to it.
You know, because the CIA, they've done a lot of dirty things. I think were they in World War II? I know they were in Vietnam.
In World War II was the OSS.
Yeah.
And the OSS was the then existing clandestine system.
Yeah.
And they had these kind of organisations that were doing nasty things. And every government in wartime, it is highly common to have various types of dirty deed doers.
Yeah, they. I think the CIA. I could be wrong. The CIA had something to do with J.F. Kennedy's death. I don't know.
Conspiracy theory.
Yeah, that's why I said could, or
Not even could.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the trouble is, it is so much easier, so much more satisfying to have a wonderful story about a big conspiracy plot with all sorts of powerful things than the fact that a stupid nutter acting on his own was able to do it. There was no skill involved.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of saying, but some of the so-called evidence is simply crap.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of crap out there, Patrick.
But in this particular case, some of the stuff I talk about is simply a total was basically Hollywood physics rather than real physics. About the way bodies move when they're hit with bullets. You know, they said, that bullet went forward. If it was simply the bullet had gone backwards. Sorry, mate, that's just Hollywood.
But still to this day, no one knows who assassinated J.F. Kennedy.
Lee Harvey Oswald.
Lee Harvey Oswald did it.
From the third floor of the Dallas Book Depository, got his little gun out and shot him. Bang, bang. And
this has been proven. Or was this conspiracy theory?
There's a bit... He was there, he had the gun, and the bullet that killed Kennedy came from his gun.
I don't know. I don't know what to say, you know.
I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, that is, well, I would say the 95% certainty. There is a remote possibility of some other people being involved, but the trouble is, for any conspiracy to involve no conspirator worth their salt would have involved a nutter like him.
Yeah.
If I was building a conspiracy to assassinate the president, I would not involve a stark raving nutter. And he was a proven nutter like Lee Harvey Oswald. Because you couldn't trust him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the making it work would have been impossible.
True.
Listen, I mean, to convince me of the existence of this major conspiracy, you need a lot more evidence than the stuff, the fact that there were extra bullets. No, there are also echoes. The way the body moved when the bullet hits it. Just study real life of how people move when their bullets hit them instead of imagining what Hollywood shows you and things like this.
Yep.
But see, some of the evidence is that the mayor who was riding with moved forwards instead of backwards when he was hit. They said, if he was hit in front, he would have had to have gone backwards. That's why the bullet would have pushed him. Well, the bullets don't push you. When a bullet hits you, it doesn't push you anywhere.
Yeah,
and your body reacts by jerking, so you go forwards.
Yeah.
No matter where the bullet hits you, you're going to go forwards.
Well, that's physics, isn't it?
Well, that's actually physiology. The physics is that a bullet doesn't have the mass to push you backwards.
Yep.
I mean, you know all those. If you're seeing a Western or any kind of shoot out where the people fly backwards after they're shot, and you've seen it on television films, haven't you?
Yep.
The only reason they go backwards when they're shot is there is a wire attached to them and the wire is pulled. If they were hit, when people are hit by a bullet, the body effectively doesn't move because the weight of the body is such compared to the weight of the bullet. In fact, the Mythbusters did it. They had a pig carcass weighing about the same as a human being, and they shot at the bullet, and it just hung there stationary.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with the CIA in Washington, there's so much secret with the American Central Intelligence Agency. In fact, the whole space race with Russia and America as well, and you get conspiracy theories about Neil Armstrong not landing on the moon.
Oh, that's a great one. That is getting into the total. That's getting into the absolutely total. Some of those ones are totally nutters.
Yeah, I mean,
to make that work would require, again, the size of the conspiracy. How many thousands, how many tens of thousands, how many thousands of people would be involved?
Yeah.
This is one of the things people tend to forget when they start inventing these stories, is just how many thousands of people would have to be involved to make it work.
Well, yeah. How old were you when the moon landing was, Patrick?
Let me see. I was 1969. I'd not yet turned 22.
Yep.
I was in my first year of teaching.
And if you mind me asking, would you be able to tell the audience the year you were born?
1947.
So you were born. Were you born at the end of the Second World War?
I actually belong to what is the true baby boom.
Wow.
So the baby boom actually happened over 2 years.
Yep.
When I talk about baby boomers, the actual baby boom itself only lasted 2 years.
Yep.
In 1946 and 1947, a lot more babies were born than in the previous years. In 1946 in particular, a huge number of babies were born.
Wow.
And then in 1947, quite a few more were born. And then by 1948, it was back to normal. Mainly because daddies who had been away for a long time came home.
Yeah, because my grandparents were born in 1935 and 1936, so that was getting to the end of the Second World War.
35 is pre-war.
That's pre-war.
Your grandparents lived through the war as children.
Because Granddad...
they would have been very young children, so they wouldn't remember it.
Yeah, Granddad lived in communist Hungary.
Oh, heavens to Betatoroid.
Yeah.
When were you born again? 1930?
1935. I think Grandma was 1936, if I've got my dates right.
He was born in 1935.
Yeah.
He would have been 10 when the war ended. And at the time he was living in Hungary, that would have been part of the German influenced area.
Yeah, he did say he saw a lot of German...
See, communist Hungary didn't exist at that stage.
It didn't.
Oh, no, Hungary was part of the Austro-Hungarian German kind of influence.
Because Stalin was around. He was the dictator of communism.
I know, but he was at that stage.
Yeah.
It was under the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
See, Stalin at that stage ran the Soviet Union, which was what is now Russia.
Yeah.
And a handful of countries that kind of surrounded Russia. Things like what countries that are now separate, like Belarus, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, some of those stands and things over in East Asia. And on the western side, I said mainly Belarus, Georgia, and Azerbaijan, which is and Armenia.
Yeah.
And these were actually part of the Soviet Union, which was a big, very big single entity.
Yep.
And countries like Hungary were small countries hanging around in what was just generally called Middle Europe. But they were mainly under the influence of Germany. Because prior to at the end of World War I, we had what was called the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Austria was actually one of the major powers. So you had all these smallish countries floating around in the middle of Europe, which effectively Germany took over. And because of where they were at the end of World War II, the Soviet Union, who was on the winning side, took over the care of them, what they would say. And by taking over responsibility for looking after them, they locked them in under their control.
Yeah, because my granddad...
But they were, in fact, separate countries.
Yeah.
Hungary has been an nominally independent country quite some time. So they were never actually directly ruled by Moscow or anything like that. They had their own government. So when I visited Hungary, it was a separate country with a separate visa, separate passport control, and all of these things.
Yeah, because Granddad told me if you tried to escape the Hungarian border, they'd shoot even a bird.
Oh yes, I mean after World War II.
Yeah.
When the Soviet Union found what was called the Warsaw Pact.
Yeah.
And basically all of those countries to the east of Germany, basically. If you kind of draw a line down the map and those countries east of Germany, countries like Hungary and Czechoslovakia were the two big ones. Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and Poland, those three were taken into the Soviet Union. Into the Soviet influence. They weren't Soviet. It became part of a big, general, common country, common union. Something like European Union, actually, except much more strongly controlled from the centre. They all fell to communist regimes, and they're all members of that same big family. And because the grass is greener on the other side of the border, and because life was pretty hard in those countries, although not necessarily as hard for everybody, people did try to get out.
Well, I don't blame them because...
So they actually did build a physical fence.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I mean, Donald Trump, minor political statement, is not the first person to try to build a border fence. In fact, the Berlin Wall was part of the fence that divided Eastern and Western Europe. Except the Berlin Wall was different because Berlin was actually in the middle of what was Eastern Germany. So it was really quite strange. It was an enclave, so you had a corridor in.
Yeah, because I remember my granddad was saying that he even saw German, would you use the word Nazi soldiers?
Yeah.
Are they called Nazis or would you call them German soldiers?
Well, in World War II, you called them German soldiers.
Yeah.
Unless you are specifically identifying them as the way they worked.
Yeah. And I think he was I think the German soldiers, even the generals, would actually go on the front line as well.
Well,
with them.
It's hard to tell. I mean, I wasn't really familiar with the German military. I mean, it's a long time since that little war of ours, that last war. It was a hair-raisingly bad war.
Yeah. Because the Germans they had their own little special unit called the SS.
Oh, again, let's not get into the details, but the German history had some very strange, very sad, and very very interesting things, shall we say?
Yeah, because I don't know if there's too much information about the SS and what they did. Were they like a special unit?
Oh, hang on. There's no, Nat, you're just totally wrong. There is so much stuff about the whole way World War II was fought and the various units within the war that you really can't. Oh no! It's more documented. I mean, in fact, basically, for the last 12 months, I mean, if you watched SBS on television, you will be seeing stuff about what the Germans did, what the SS did, what those various branches of the German army did. Oh no, it's very well known.
You see, the Russian had the Gulag camps, and there were German soldiers that were captured and taken to Siberia.
Oh, well, that's another interesting one.
And they weren't. And under the Geneva Convention, they were supposed to be looked after.
Oh well, I mean, again, what happened when the Gulags, the Russians also, but the Soviets, also had the camps for their internal dissidents as well. So in that sense, they weren't treating the German prisoners any significantly differently. The big issue, the big problem with the Gulags was after World War II. Quite a few of the Germans who had returned. So quite a few of the Russians who had returned from having been captured in the war were treated as being suspicious because they'd been exposed to those corrupting influences or they'd surrendered or something, and they were in fact again locked up in Russia. And what happened to prisoners of war at various times in various places is just one of these things that just happens.
Yeah, I mean, and then you had the POWs, the Japanese, when they captured.
I mean, as I said, there are all sorts of things happened in and around with most of the parties in World War II. There is little evidence and no major suggestions that the British or the Allies generally were in any way out of order in the way they treated the prisoners of war. But because there have been no complaints made, shall we say. And certainly most prisoners of the war in Germany, for instance, were treated reasonably well, bearing in mind that they were moved back from the front line. So they were in very unpleasant parts of the country. In winter it was very cold, and Germany's economy was falling to pieces.
Yeah, they were poor.
So the country was going broke, so it was very hard for them to look after those prisoners as well as they should have. So what the actual treatment of prisoners was also partly a function of the fact that the country was going broke. Not any deliberate callousness. So really, I would not go into a major rewrite of the history of the World War II, except to say that certainly there were some very evil things happened to prisoners of war.
I mean,
at various times through World War II and even World War I.
You had Australia had involvement with Japan, and there were some Australian POWs were captured in World War II.
Australian prisoners of war in Japan, it's again very well documented.
Yeah.
I've known a couple of ex-POWs from the Japanese. I knew a couple of them in my lifetime.
What'd they say? What did they talk? What
Oh,
happened?
they didn't.
Yeah, you know.
Generally, they don't. This is a thing because it was not a happy experience.
No.
But again, this was, with the Japanese in particular, which is the one that affected Australia, because there were a lot of Australian prisoners of war in Japan under Japanese control, and they were treated incredibly harshly.
Because
the thing was, and this is something people tend to forget, is that they were not treated, although they were treated incredibly harshly, they were not necessarily treated hugely amount worse than the Japanese treated their own troops.
Wow.
The Japanese had a very, very strict system. So, to some extent, the way the Japanese treated the Australians, it was just, they were certainly, you know, the thing is that the Japanese whole culture had this toughness to it at that time, of treating people toughly at that time.
Yeah, I mean, they saw being captured as if you were captured, you were a coward.
There was something of that, to some extent that was the case, yes, that's what I'm saying.
And the Japanese, well, to avoid capture, did what was called kamikaze.
No, harakiri.
Oh, it's harakiri, not kamikaze. Wrong one. My apologies.
Yes. The kamikaze was another thing again.
But
again, as I said, that was somewhat aberrant behaviour, really.
Because I know they hated American troops for some reason. Americans.
The thing when you think about it, a lot of warfare is about training your troops to not necessarily hate your opponent, not to hate your opponents, but to a lot of time. Again, this whole thing was that the stories behind Second World War is slightly more complicated than the simple story of Japanese expansionism.
Yeah.
There are more complications to it than that. It's not quite as simple as that, shall I say.
Well, there was a Japanese submarine found in Sydney Harbour.
Yeah. It's still down the Memorial in Canberra.
And they did bomb Darwin as well, because
and they actually sank shipping off the New South Wales coast.
That's scary.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of a long way away, but not all that far away.
Well, how far is Japan from Australia? What, 8 hour flight?
Yeah, so it's significant. But once you put a navy at sea,
yeah, and
once you have that navy operating out of the islands off New Guinea, that's how far. That is actually the extent to which Japan extended its navy during the war. And once you have a navy,
yeah,
naval vessels can sail a long way.
Well, they are. They're a transportation they're like an airport.
That's how these boats can go a long way.
Yeah.
And, but I said there was certainly shipping sunk almost certainly by submarines off the south coast of New South Wales. So the war actually did come quite close to Australia.
Yeah. How come Japan failed to take over Australia?
Probably distance more than anything.
Yet they were so good to manage to come all the way to Darwin.
Oh, no, they never actually landed in Darwin.
Yeah.
They were able to. So don't forget, to be able to attack a country by air is quite different to be able to invade and land in that country.
Yeah.
I mean, don't forget that Britain was bombing Western Europe from, certainly 1941. It probably even 1940, certainly probably even 1940, and they didn't land in there until 1944. But it took them, 3 years of getting ready to get in there.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about it is that for Britain to get into Western France, they had, 50 miles of ocean to cover?
Yeah.
Oh, and the Americans had the whole Atlantic to cross, but at least they had eventually that became fairly safe. The Russians, to get into Australia, the Japanese were moderately well established in New Guinea, certainly on the northern side of New Guinea. However, that's kind of about as close as they ever got. Because, if they wanted to get stuff into New Guinea to kind of come down to Australia, the rest of Australia, that's also fairly close to Australia. And Australians get back at them. When Australia, if they can bomb Darwin, the Americans in particular, with their with their aircraft carriers, could bomb them.
Yeah, I mean,
so it was mutual.
I mean, you look at the German fighter pilots. They were quite good. They were.
Oh yes, I mean there was some very good fighting ability.
The German army seemed to have a very top army. They were one of the best, yet they lost.
Yeah, sheer numbers.
Yeah.
They made 1.5 mistakes. Their big mistake was taking on Russia, or the Soviet Union, because Russia was even bigger, and it is. And Russia has what is often regarded as its own special army, Navy winter. And the Germans, just as Napoleon did way back 150 years before, suddenly found out that it's very cold in Russia.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah.
No, seriously. And it's a long way from anywhere. I mean, Russia is very, very big.
Yeah.
And basically, so they when the Germans started going into the Russian states, they found that they had very long supply lines and very cold, and they just got bogged down.
Yeah, well, it freezes up your weapons as well.
Oh, yeah, I mean, so that was the first thing. And their second mistake was being allied with Japan, who decided to go to war and bringing in America. And when America came into the war, that all of a sudden put another very big army in against the German army. So basically, the Germans certainly had a superior army at the start of the war. But their opposing armies certainly trained up and learned how to be good army, practical experience, and eventually just had the sheer numbers. And the other thing was Germany, if you look at it on a map, is cut off from the rest of the world. They had very limited supplies.
Yeah, they did. It was very difficult.
They had access to resources. So things like rubber. That's one of the reasons why the whole Malay Peninsula bit was important, because that was partly getting rubber, partly control rubber. So things like that, things like even rubber, was played an important thing. I mean, you try running an army without rubber tyres on your vehicles. That's one thing. But think about it. Things like that's not the only thing, but that kind of thing. So, and although Germany has fairly good coal and iron, they weren't unlimited. So Germany was a kind of enclosed, whereas although England is a smallish bit of land, it was accessible by ocean to America. So America kept England fed. Or America was fed via England, and places like Australia or America and Canada, they kept England fed through the war. Things like this. So Germany found that they'd actually bitten off more than they could chew. But ultimately, there were two big mistakes. One was having a crack at Russia. Because there is some state people who believe that Hitler actually believed that England would help them against Russia.
Hike the trail? Check. Order takeout? Check. Schedule heart checkup? Done. We've all adapted to a new way of living. Keep your healthcare on schedule with Johns Hopkins Medicine, where your health and safety are our highest priorities. We're ready to care for you through virtual and in-person visits across Maryland and the greater Washington region. Your health, our experts, safely caring for you. Schedule your care now. Learn more at hopkinsmedicine.org/safe.
911, what's your emergency?
Una camioneta que se puso en las vías. Y el tren, ay Dios mío.
Señora, ¿me estás diciendo que un tren le pegó a una camioneta?
Sí, yo pensé que alcanzaría a cruzar, ellos iban rápido, creo, y después... Ay Dios mío, qué horror.
No puedes saber a qué velocidad viene un tren. Por eso están los señalamientos de advertencia. Obedécelos. Alto, el tren no para.
Mensaje de Netza.
And going against Russia was one major boo-boo because it really changed having a country that was basically on its side to a country to a huge army and a huge country physically fighting against them. And as I said, being allied with Japan, who brought Russia in, who brought America in, and that's half a mistake because the thing was what the fact that America then actually came in against Germany itself was just happened. I mean, that did not necessarily have to happen. America could have focused on its Pacific War and let the European war fight itself out.
Yeah, I suppose, Australia, going back to Gallipoli, did Australians ever capture other Japanese soldiers? Did we ever have prisoner of war camps?
Yes. I mean, getting back to New Guinea.
Yeah.
The first major turn back and capture of Japanese happened with Australian troops in New Guinea. One of the first major events. Where the Japanese advance was stopped dead cold in its tracks. Again, the shape of the country helped them because New Guinea is a very much up and down country, so it was a very dirty war physically. But the Australian troops actually did turn the Japanese back. I can't remember the exact place. I should remember it. I can't remember the name of something Bay. But anyway, the Australian troops actually were able to eventually get the upper hand against Japanese there. Again, partly when you think of it, because the Australians were closer to home, the Japanese were further from home, and therefore the Australians were fighting more strongly. Partly because by that stage, they knew what they were doing better.
Yeah, I mean, the Australians went up to New Guinea as well. That's like all jungle, very hot and muggy.
Yeah, as I said, it really was a very, very unpleasant war, the whole Kokoda story. And basically, it was what was called a fighting retreat. The Australians pulled back from the north to the south over the ranges. And the Japanese were following them, and there were times they were within feet of each other almost.
See,
and but they kind of eventually got to a point where they were able to stop them.
Back in that time, they had conscripts. Now, were you ever conscripted to join the military?
No. I mean, I was in the second batch of conscription available, called up.
Yep.
With this was actually in the 60s. We had the Vietnam 1960.
Yeah.
64, we sent in advisory troops. 65 or 66, can't remember the exact year now. We started sending in troops to Vietnam, and I started conscripting to build the army up to send people into it. But it was done on a lottery on your birthday. What they did was they pulled birthdays out of the barrel. If your number came out of the barrel, you're in the army now.
What about the Air Force and the Navy? What was the difference?
Well, the same thing. You're in the services.
So they just automatically put you there. You had no choice.
Conscripted means you're in the army now. Report tomorrow.
What happens if you were conscripted and then you were going to go to special forces? Did they handpick you for that, or how did all that work?
Look, once first of all, the role of conscripts were banged into the regular army.
Yeah.
Put into one RAR and trained up to the extent that they were necessarily trained up to be able to fight in Vietnam, to fight the war they were going to fight.
Yeah.
If you wanted to become a specialist in something like that, basically you had to become a regular army member.
Yeah, because
you basically had to voluntarily sign up for the long term.
Yeah, because you had
They weren't picking many special. Weren't picking of the elite units, those special units.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were conscripted, you could end up in any branch of the army. You could end up in the artillery or the intelligence or the whatever or the whatever.
Yeah.
And several of my classmates did end up in the army. And one of them ended up thought that intelligence would be a soft. He thought that intelligence would be a softish option, and found out that it meant being what they call the tunnel rats, whose job was to go down into these tunnel systems that the Viet Cong were using to hide themselves underground and getting them out from underground. So it was underground fighting, which was not very good.
Who went in under the tunnel? Special forces or regular?
No, regular. As I said, this was a conscript.
Yeah. But see, to be a special forces operator, because in Vietnam we had our SAS and commandos, we did.
Yeah. Well, these units, you have to apply to get in there.
Yep.
And pass the test. But before you could apply to get in there or to pass the test, you would have to sign up to serve as a regular soldier in the long term. True. Because they're not going to train you up to be a commando for 2 years.
Yeah.
These conscripts had a 2-year service.
Yep.
And if you had to become an SAS or a commando, you had to be prepared to hang around for years.
Yeah, because
you had to be signed up had to be signed up as a regular officer, a regular soldier.
Because the training for that is quite brutal, and men have been killed.
Don't believe what you see on the TV.
That's true, but the men have been injured, and
people get killed in ordinary regular army training.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But see, for a special unit, they wanted the most elite of the elite because to be able to go food deprived and sleep deprived on the job.
I mean, but certainly that happens to regular troops as well.
Yep. But what?
Oh yeah. I mean, don't forget if you're in an active battle situation, it might go on for 2 days non-stop.
What's the difference for the audience, Patrick, between a regular frontline soldier and a SAS or a commando?
Well, commandos are actually very technically, they used to be Marines. These are designed to generally operate as smaller units.
Yeah.
Doing highly specialised and highly dangerous tasks. So basically, if you wanted somebody to infiltrate a particular place, you would send in you would use the SAS, special air services, or the commandos.
Yeah.
If you wanted to drop a group of 20 people behind enemy lines to attack a particular small target. What you want is a small, very well trained so they can work together. Much of the training is actually about being able to work together as a team, as a unit.
Yeah.
Very, very strongly cohesive, but also with particular skills and things like handling explosives, handling slightly unusual weaponry.
Yeah.
Maybe special physical skills like climbing or boating or commandos were technically boat launched.
Yeah, they were in I think World War One.
The Royal Marine Commandos, but they're basically members of the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Originally, but again, that's because they were landed by boat. But so basically, to become those special services, the main requirement would be that first we had to have the physicality to be able to do it.
Yeah.
But you also need enough intelligence to be able to learn quite a range of quite technical skills. I mean, you probably need to be able to handle communications gear in case your communication specialist dropped out, things like this. But certainly physical skills like things like climbing, regular troops get instruction in things like accessing buildings and things generally nowadays, urban warfare. But the SAS troops have also been receiving training in things like attacking fortified buildings, getting in through 6-inch steel plate doors and things. I'm cooking the egg here, but over-eating the pudding. But so things like this. So basically, it is specialised skills for specialised, very focused. That's the original purpose, very focused tasks. They would be given a particular job to do, and they would go in and carry out that job.
Yeah.
Although in World War II there were some other interesting groups who were of the similar vein but different.
I mean, the use of Morse code was very big with special units.
Oh, well, Morse code, the reason why you use Morse is that it's easy. And that's mechanically it's easy. A Morse transmitter is a small thing. It's basically you don't need as much gear to transmit Morse. And the other thing about Morse is it's digital, which means that it's much easier to encrypt.
Yeah.
You see, it was even during World War II, and actually even after World War II, because one of Solzhenitsyn's novels deals with it, is it's actually quite difficult to encrypt the spoken voice. So once you've turned something into digital to encrypt it, by which I mean you've broken its characters down to its pieces, you might as well transmit it digitally as bits and pieces. And Morse code is essentially a precursor of the codes we use nowadays, for instance, ASCII to communicate with.
Yeah. I mean,
Morse code is simply a way of transmitting information digitally.
See, is Morse code recorded or
it
not?
Can be.
Because wouldn't you think, okay, if SAS or Commando were using it, the enemy's going to pick up on that and sort of know where...
That's why they encrypt it.
Gotcha.
They think it's much easier to encrypt digital stuff.
Yeah.
And interestingly, in terms of encryption capacity, and the so-called Enigma machine was an absolutely superb piece of encryption apparatus, which unfortunately they didn't realise had actually access to a couple of them, and because of a couple of very subtle flaws in the mathematical design of it, were able to essentially break. So they were able to read most of the German communications through a significant proportion of the German communications through the war. And this is one of the reasons why the Battle of the Atlantic, eventually the U-boats stopped sinking all of the British ships. Was the British were able to work out where the U-boats were going to be because they were intercepting their messages saying go there, and they were able to kind of accidentally be in the same area and bomb the hell out of them.
Yeah.
Morse code has the advantage that it's much easier to encrypt, much simpler information, much simpler equipment. And therefore, so it's much, and because of that, you can get better range, greater clarity. Because it's digital, you can get greater clarity. Because with voice, if voice starts being distorted, you get the kind of thing, and you can't get the message at all. Morse is the person listening.
Yeah.
The person listening. It's basically yes or no. It is essentially a digital system.
It's communication.
But it's digital communication.
Yeah.
And it's been around since Morse invented it.
It is quite effective. I don't know if it's still used today.
Oh, Oh, yes, it's still around. There's still people who do it, still use it. It's still basically around, but don't forget that right now we're using its direct descendant. And right now, but when you think what's happening, I'm speaking to you. My voice is being broken down into a digital system because this is all digital, which is then converted into a series of dots and zeros and ones, dots and dashes, and transmitted as a digital signal to you, which then reassembles the voice. It's just that nowadays with the technology we can much more easily have the gear to break a voice signal down into digital components, encrypted, because don't forget what I'm sending out to you is encrypted, and then decrypted, and then reassembled.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to touch back on special operations. Like, you get so many frontline soldiers will go and try it out, but not all of them can make it.
Well, as I said, it requires...
Yeah.
Their first requirement is this physicality.
Yeah.
That is, but it also requires that decatedness, the capacity to just carry on and carry on. The toughness. And that's where that TV series has it right. They really do. I mean, a few years ago, they actually had the British one actually showing the real thing live, the real thing from Britain. And it was similarly tough.
You see, they're known to actually put you through interrogation training as well.
No, things like interrogation training happen after you've been accepted.
Yeah.
And interrogation training was fairly standard for a lot of troops in World War II.
Even frontline soldiers?
No, not so much frontline soldiers, but certainly a lot of Air Force personnel received interrogation training.
Yeah.
Anybody who had any kind of access to anything sensitive was given some degree of interrogation training.
Oh, God, yeah.
See, the point is that if you have access to sensitive information, then it is desirable. But so interrogation training, the thing is, one of the problems with interrogation training is that even though it's particularly nasty, mate, at the back of your mind, you know that it's not the real thing.
Yeah, but see, the problem is there are a lot of troops that just can't handle it, and it's pressure mentally.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the ones they can't accept them if they will sign the form.
That's I mean, this is part of the training.
Yeah.
Part of the requirements. I mean, to be a specialist. Look, think about it. What happens if you want to become a specialist orthopedic surgeon?
Yeah.
You spend 7 years studying medicine. You spend another 6 years studying orthopedics, and then you pass, and then you are subjected to about 12 hours of absolutely ridiculously hard, almost impossible to pass examinations.
Yep.
You fail, stiff luck.
What can you do?
Become a GP. That's what I mean. The point is, to become a specialist in anything is hard.
Oh, yeah. I mean...
But think about becoming a specialist musician.
Yeah.
But think about the serious, good quality musicians, how much practice they actually do.
I've been through it.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned that one.
Yeah.
You know, a seriously good quality musician, you know, but that's why I see myself a bit of a joke as a singer, because I don't put in the 2 hours a day that I should. If I was serious about singing, I'd do 2 hours a day of training. Yeah. Yep.
Same thing.
Same thing. Exactly. When you think about it, it's that same determination, stick-at-itness, cussedness, to use an Australian word, and you have to actually genuinely want to do it.
Yeah.
And for the right reason. That's the other thing is that more and more they're learning to get the psychology of making sure you want to do it for the right reason.
I mean, playing music at a tertiary level is not easy. It's very hard.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, exactly.
Very exhausting.
I mean, as a serious performer.
Yeah.
I mean, there are lots of people who consider themselves musicians out there who are very successful in the musical world, who I would not pass the time of day with as real musicians. They have developed a style and gimmick that works and is easy to listen to, but when you actually listen to them, their technicality is quite weak. And other ones, when you look and say, oh, they really are very, very good musicians.
Yeah, same thing. Practice.
Yes, practice.
You got to want to get up.
The ones who rely on the microphone to do the work, and the ones who rely on their own lungs.
Well, now we have something what's called an auto-tuner.
Yeah, lots of those things around. Yeah.
That's cheating, because I truly believe if you're relying on an auto-tune, you're not a real musician.
No. This is different again. If you think about it, very few people actually have what's called perfect pitch. Very few people indeed can pitch it and say, that's middle C. Very few people can do that. So if you want to tune an instrument as distinct from your voice, you need to be given the pitch.
That's it.
To start from. You need some kind of tuner to tune from.
Yeah.
So you might have a tuning fork. Ding! Now, once you've got the first part of your instrument tuned, be it one string on the guitar, since you're about auto tuners which mainly apply with guitars, or one string on your violin, then you can tune the rest from that, yes.
Well, when I was...
Once you've got one right, then once you've got the bottom string right, then you just go up to, you got the right number of frets, go donk, donk, and the next one, you tune to that. So you can actually tune them from one from the next.
Yeah, well...
But all the auto-tuner takes out is the necessity of actually doing it two-handed. But the point is that if you want to tune a guitar manually, you go to the fret with your left hand, you pluck that string, pluck two strings, and you say, I'm a bit low. You tighten it a bit. You can think, I'm still a bit low, or I'm a bit high, you snap it off it. Whereas with the auto-tuner, you can actually have your hand on the tuning nut and tune the string directly. To me, it is simply a legitimate shortcut.
Yeah, I mean...
because the tuning of the instrument isn't the playing of the instrument.
Look, when I was studying at a bachelor's degree, we tuned a couple of ways. If we were in orchestra, we tuned from the first violinist.
Or the oboe, if you have an oboe.
Oh, oboe. Yeah, oboe, first violinist, or I used a chromatic tuner. I used to practice.
Yeah,
or
you practice, yeah.
Or the piano. But see, I feel now too many singers are relying on the auto-tune, and to me, that's cheating. You should...
But the singer, when you say an auto-tune for the singer...
Yeah. That's just my opinion.
I'm not sure what do you mean by an auto-tune for a singer? What you mean to say they have the melody playing in their ear?
No, because of technology, they got these, special microphones that can change their voice, change the pitch as well.
Oh, no, you can... Oh, no, you can do all sorts of things with the voice after it's gone into the microphone.
Yeah.
So you can correct a performance, yes.
Yeah.
However, that's no longer performing live.
But I truly...
I mean, to that extent, to me, that's... but I'm not sure whether they actually operate. I'm not sure whether technology enables them to do that in real time.
There is software now you can download. And
you can actually correct your pitch real time.
Yeah.
Well, that's a little bit... It's a technology that... It's an interesting one, that. Control of pitch is a mechanical skill.
Yeah.
And mechanical skills do enable artistry to be presented. However, it is a mechanical skill that is part of the craft as from the art of the music. So if you are still expressing yourself, and the trouble is a lot of these people who are using these things are not actually expressing any real emotion through their singing.
There's no emotion.
If you are expressing yourself and expressing something more than just the notes through the music, then you are probably still creating art.
Well, you look at Britney Spears. Honestly, she wasn't the most talented singer. A lot of that's done with auto-tune, like, you know.
Well, as I said, but she had looks going for her.
Yeah.
That is one of the problems you see. It's because that whole thing is you had the visual aspect.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I've never admired her musical product anyway.
No, it's shit.
No, I've never admired it. It's not something that appeals to me.
You got Lady Gaga as well.
No, on the other hand, Lady Gaga can sing. Lady Gaga can and does sing.
Yeah.
I mean, it took me a long time to realise that. But Lady Gaga is one of those ones, if you actually listen to her and watch her, she is singing that stuff, and B, there is a hell of a lot of musical craft and art in there, a hell of a lot more than you kind of first realise. But
what about Michael Jackson? He was quite a talented singer.
Yes, he was quite a talented singer. Again, he sat in a particular style. This is one of the things, a lot of singers develop a particular style that becomes their style and becomes highly entertaining and highly valuable and highly, again, extraordinary. When you think about what he did, some of the stuff he did was really extraordinary.
Yeah,
again,
did.
Yeah, so again, yeah, yes, he was. I mean, there's so much talent around.
Yeah.
And the trouble is the only trouble is that doesn't matter how much talent you have. In the artistic world, you also need
marketing,
and for the marketing to catch, you need yourself to have a certain amount of. The only word for it is arrogance. Particularly in things like performing art, like music, etc. You have to have you have to have the belief in yourself that I am good enough to get out there and do it. And you need somebody else, and then you need a certain amount of luck. You need to hit the right thing at the right time.
Yeah, well, I think that's how the Beatles became successful. You were around when the Beatles were.
Oh, yes, I'm old enough to remember the Beatles being.
And Jimi Hendrix.
I remember those young men with that ridiculously long hair.
And Jimi Hendrix and Elvis Presley and the Rolling Stones.
Elvis Presley was already well established by the time I was listening to him, yes. And Elvis Presley is another one for whom I have a lot more time. Again, Elvis Presley, as baritones go, is a bloody good one.
But see, his manager ripped him off.
Oh, that's it. I mean, there are all sorts of other things that happen to people.
And it's believed that his manager murdered someone in another country.
Oh, there are all sorts of it's believed that somebody says. And you know what? I don't listen to those. I don't worry about those stories. They're good stories.
Stories that sell.
Yeah. Now, the important thing about Elvis is that he produced some bloody remarkably good music.
Never left America.
Some reasonable films,
yeah.
And some bloody appallingly bad films, and some pretty terrible music in some of those films too. So, but nevertheless, some of his better stuff was absolutely extraordinary.
He never left the United States.
That's right. Well, lots of people never. I'm sorry, he spent several years in Germany.
Did he? Oh, for tour. I mean, like when he became successful as a musician.
After he was successful as a musician, don't forget Elvis was conscripted.
Yeah, he was. He was in the army.
And he was in Germany.
Oh, I didn't know that. But it's got
part of the Cold War.
Yeah. See, he died. He died of a heart attack.
Yes.
He used to eat a very unhealthy diet, like of cheeseburgers.
Into a very unhealthy man in his older age, yes. Not that he was very old.
Yeah. What can you do? Such talent.
Part of the problem is that extraordinary talent gave rise to extraordinary success, which gave rise to an extraordinary number of people who said, mate, you're the greatest, and you're the king.
Yeah. All right, Pat.
And you believe your own stories.
Patrick, it was a fantastic interview with you today on the Stephen Shiels Radio Show. I'm going to have you back on again.
Okay.
It was really, really interesting stuff. A lot of history you've shared. Do you have social media, or where can people get in contact with you?
Not really, no. I'm a bit kind of quiet that way. I have a Facebook page I look at once a year.
You're the old-fashioned...
Yep, the old-fashioned type, yeah.
Newspaper.
Yeah. Electronic newspaper, but still newspaper.
All right, thanks for listening to today's podcast with Patrick. It was I loved today's show. You can listen to my newest single on Spotify called Apocalypse. That's on Spotify, so go follow me on Spotify, subscribe. Check out my latest music video, Judas, on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like, turn on the notifications. Also, subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcast. I'm on Apple, Spotify, or I think Stitcher, iHeartRadio. Subscribe to that. Stay up to date on my Facebook page and Instagram as well. Go and follow me on that. Links in the description. See you in the next episode.
Hike the trail? Check. Order takeout? Check. Schedule heart checkup? Done. We've all adapted to a new way of living. Keep your healthcare on schedule with Johns Hopkins Medicine, where your health and safety are our highest priorities. We're ready to care for you through virtual and in-person visits across Maryland and the greater Washington region. Your health, our experts, safely caring for you. Schedule your care now. Learn more at hopkinsmedicine.org/safe. Hike the trail? Check. Order takeout? Check. Schedule heart checkup? Done. We've all adapted to a new way of living. Keep your healthcare on schedule with Johns Hopkins Medicine, where your health and safety are our highest priorities. We're ready to care for you through virtual and in-person visits across Maryland and the greater Washington region. Your health, our experts, safely caring for you. Schedule your care now. Learn more at hopkinsmedicine.org/safe.